Hello viewers and welcome to McElroy's Motors, and in today's video I have on Sadie. She's covered in snow again. Hang on a second. That's got it! This is my 1997 Saturn SL1 that I named Sadie. If you guys recall, back in October when I picked up this thing, it has now been 5 months and I've covered 7,500 miles in this car already. In this video I will basically be discussing what are my future plans with this car, what has changed my mind about this car, and above else, what I overall think about this car, because Saturn as we know it has not existed as a brand for going on 15 years now. So I think it deserves a bit of a video update. And I don't know what this is. I swear I did not use this to brush off the car. Ugh. Like I said, I have owned this car for 5 months and I have covered 7,500 miles in it. I have driven it to Kentucky, I have driven it to Washington DC, and off camera I have driven it to Virginia twice. And it's been absolutely incredible. And despite needing some odd fixes here and there, such as the exhaust, the brakes, and of course the dome light, which seems to be holding just fine, it's been absolutely impeccably reliable, despite this car being on the road for nearly 3 decades. As far as general reliability, I think it is quite fantastic, given the fact that this car has been on the road for almost 3 decades. I had to replace the brakes, I had to fix the exhaust, and of course I had to fix the dome light. But those were just relatively small things, because, like I said, this car has been on the road for almost 30 years, and it is an American car, so I really wasn't expecting to last this amount of time. But overall, generally speaking, it has proven to be one capable little car, and I would say, as an owner of a 2005 Honda Accord, which I owned back in 2018 and 2019, this thing is far more reliable than that Honda ever was. But then again, the Honda had over 3 times the mileage, and while it still felt solid and whatnot, it didn't feel like it was going to last a great deal of time compared to this Saturn. If there's one thing I also like about this car is it gives an overall mechanical feel to it. Even though this is a 1997 car, it definitely feels like a car, to drive at least, from a car from 1985, and that is not a complaint, because cars in 1985, even though they're nowhere near as safe as a car from today, there's just something more rewarding about it. The fact that you can feel what the 4 wheels are doing, you can feel what the steering is doing, you can feel pretty much everything in the car, and that's a feeling I absolutely adore. I like a car that I can feel everything in, and this car gives that with a smile on my face, because even though it does get more tiring after a long trip, it definitely gives a more entertaining feel to it. But if there's one criticism I have about this car, is the interior materials. The interior materials are not luxurious by any stretch of the means, and they do tend to shake and vibrate as the car is idling. But I think that in a sense gives the car character, to which this car has in complete spades. I did say in the hubcap installation video that I think this car has separation anxiety. As you can see, I have the key in my hand. And I did try removing the fuse that controls the chime to this car. And while it did fix my problem, it caused another one. It completely disabled my radio. And if you know me very well at all, I cannot live without a radio on a long distance travel. Under the hood of my Saturn is a 1.9 liter single overhead cam, 8 valve inline 4-cylinder, making it even 100 horsepower. Now you may think to yourselves, that is definitely not enough power to haul a compact car around, but let me tell you, it is just enough. And if you need more power, there is a dual overhead cam variant with 16 valves and 24 horsepower more. But in terms of overall acceleration, it is not exactly breathtaking. It won't set your world on fire, But in terms of being an overall commuter car, it really isn't that bad. And plus it gets up to 37 miles per gallon no matter how hard you drive it. And one thing Saturns are also known for, especially Saturn SLs and SCs and SWs, they are known for burning oil. And what is surprising to hear is the fact that during the 7,500 miles I've commuted in this car, it has not burned a single drop of oil during the entire time I've owned it. And that just shows that the previous owner, the 95-year-old lady who I got this from, she really took care of it. And I am just amazed that everything works as good as it should, even 5 months after I took ownership. And of course, being an older car, not only is it cheaper to maintain, but also cheaper to insure. And being 25 plus years old, I don't have to worry about any emissions programs whatsoever, which is a big plus because Ohio's emissions programs are ridiculous, I'll put it that way. With that being said though, I do pay $135 a month to insure this car through Geico. And the reason why it's a little bit more expensive than you might think is because I'm still a young driver, and the fact that this vehicle does not have any anti-theft software in it, or any anti-lock brakes, or any basically driving softwares to keep the car safe on the road. The safest part of the car is the fact the driver. I really can't fault it for that, because I would much rather drive this than a Tesla or any other electric vehicle. In fact, I am with Matt from High Peak Autos when I say this. Driving and maintaining an older car is far more environmentally friendly than driving something that's brand new off the shelf, because you don't have to worry about the manufacturing process, you don't have to worry about the batteries being built. It is just overall a much more pleasant experience. Granted, the cars do tend to pollute more out of the back of the car, but that's the same with any other older car. That's just a small price I'm willing to pay. Just to prove my point further and drive at home, I am going to take the Saturn now to go get an oil change. And bear in mind, I have a budget set out for about $65. I bet you I can probably get it done for far cheaper than that. Ooh boy, they are quite busy today. That's good. Good for business. They are going to be busy for the next 20 to 25 minutes, and you may think, Nick, you're a car guy. You should do the oil change yourself. And you'd be right, I can. But for one thing, I'm lazy. I'm not going to do it myself, especially with the weather being about 32 degrees Fahrenheit outside. And secondly, I like to get out. So, I guess I'm not complaining. Plus, I have no idea how to even do an oil change on a Saturn. I've actually never worked on one of these things before. So, I guess I'll be learning a new language. Not a language of love, but a language nonetheless. She starts up instantly and every single time. There is a Chevrolet Colorado pickup truck in front of me right now, and he is in the garage now, and I'm next in line. So yeah, shouldn't be too long, I hope. Well, I moved over here to get next in line, and look at this Ford Fiesta. Looks like my air freshener is telling me something to do. Oh well. Now, before you guys go down in the comments section and say, didn't you get an oil change done when you picked up the car from Royal Repairs, when you got the car's brakes done? And the answer to that is yes, and they did not charge me for that. But they put the wrong kind of oil in. This car requires 5W30, and they put 10W30 in. And while the car's been running okay, I just want to make sure that the car has all the specifications and all the matching numbers right. And you may think, you should give them a call and cuss their brains out. I would if they would have charged me for the oil change, but as they didn't, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to make their day ruined, because they did a fantastic job with the brakes, and the brakes themselves are holding as sweetly as ever. Right, in we go. Oh. Windows are a little slow, but that's okay. With a budget of $65, I got it done for $54.43. Tesla! This old car definitely is a lot smoother than it was before I got the oil change. Then again, she's good for 3,000 miles. So, all in all, for $54.43 out the door, I cannot complain. And you may not be able to see it off camera, but there's a very sweet off-road spec Porsche Cayenne in front of me. Awesome. But coming back to the Saturn, I will say though, despite this car being cheap to insure, cheap to maintain, and cheap overall just in general, it is just such a pleasant little car. Much more pleasant than I originally expected. When I first bought this car, I didn't really like it all that much, I must be honest. But overall, in time, it really did grow on me, much like a zit or a sore thumb. Ouch. But it just shows that old cars are worth another chance. I know some people in this world, like my brother, who wouldn't drive this car simply because it is too old for his liking. But this car is just proven to be reliable, it's been proven to be comfortable, it's been proven to be just a overall decent everyday driver. And that is all I really expect out of it. Granted, I did drive it to Washington, D.C., I did drive it to Kentucky, and like I said, I've driven it to Virginia twice. But it just keeps on giving. It wants to be your friend. It wants to be a colleague. It wants to be something you can trust. And that, in regards, is something truly amazing. It just shows you can actually bond with a car despite its age. And one thing I also love about the Saturn, despite its age and despite the fact that I got it from an old lady, is the fact I feel like it's communicating to me. I can tell when it's not happy. I can tell when it's not in the best shape it can possibly be, especially when the exhaust split. But overall, I just feel like I'm at home with this car, and I drive it so much. I've covered 7,500 miles, which is quite a lot in 5 months, but it's also half the yearly average for cars in the United States. So for me to put half the amount of miles that most people drive in a year in less than 6 months is pretty incredible, especially given the fact that this car is in fact older than I am. In fact, this car left the factory in August of 1996, and I wasn't born until August of 1998. So this car was already 2 years old by the time my mother introduced me to the world. That being said, however, there are some things about this car that I could definitely see that could definitely use improvement. Like I said, the interior materials in this car are not great. To put in perspective, I used to have a 2007 Ford Focus, and that thing felt like a spaceship compared to this. It was much more fun to drive. It had a lot more creature comforts. The interior materials were not great, but at the same time, they were not as bad as it is in here. This is just typical, old school, cheap General Motors plastic in here. And while that's not a bad thing, it just doesn't feel like it's going to hold up as long as, let's say, my Ford Focus. And even compared to my Honda Accord, this thing feels a little tinny. But that's okay, because I love it for that, because it doesn't want to be anything that it's not trying to be. It's not trying to be a flat-out sports car or something fancy or indeed luxurious. No, it's just designed to get you to and from places, and with the fact that it has these legendary plastic body panels, it can get you there with the peace of mind that your car will not be dented by shopping carts, people being clueless, or just being envious that you're driving a Saturn and they're not. Now, in the year of 2000, Saturn actually took the horn button locations and put it actually on the horn pad and center steering wheel. But before then, they actually put the horn buttons down towards the bottom of the steering wheel, which I really did not like at first. But overall, I am getting used to it, and it adds definitely a 1990s vibe. And for some reason, I don't know if it's just me, but I always thought that 1990s cars smelled a lot better in terms of their interiors. I owned a 1997 Honda Odyssey before, and it was the same story. And every time I even sit in a 1990s Honda, not only am I reminded of my Honda Odyssey that I once owned, but also reminds me of the car my grandmother had when I started liking cars back when I was 2, which was a 1992 Honda Accord with a 5-speed manual transmission. She absolutely loved that car, and every time I drive this Saturn, it reminds me of that car because of the smell on the inside. I don't know if it's this guava-scented air freshener, but it just has a sweet, charismatic, characterful smell to it that you just do not get in a brand new car. Now, when I first got this car back in October, I happened to notice it does have some patina on it, by which I mean the clear coat on the roof and indeed the trunk is starting to fail. And I said the following. Well, here's the Saturn in all its glory. It's got its famous patina, which I absolutely adore. Won't be a big problem to fix. But here we are, 5 months later. I no longer look like Shaggy and Velma's long-lost love child, and honestly, the patina is growing on me. I think it adds more character to the car already. It just shows that the car has respect, or should deserve some respect, for being on the road 28 years after it left the assembly line. And I love it for that, because General Motors paint quality was not the best in the 1990s, and the fact that it still has paint after almost 30 years is simply amazing. This car has never been repainted. It never once really was restored. I didn't really have to do much to it when I first got it, but it's just all original apart from the hubcaps. So this is McElroy's Motors, and in fact, I am thinking about doing something quite outlandish and definitely unique, especially for the Saturn National Car Show that is coming up in May. And I'm hoping that the weather holds somewhat decently between now and then so I can possibly get this done. As you guys know, I do collect losing lottery tickets. In fact, I have one right here. I'm thinking about making some kind of wrap with my lottery tickets, given the fact that I have probably upwards of 3,000 of them by now. And I think it would be pretty cool to have it on the exterior as well as the interior of the Saturn, like with this being also the headliner. I mean, just picture this. I mean, I know it looks tacky, but I like tacky things. I am just so happy knowing I got the brakes done on this car, because let me tell you, when I first noticed that the car had a problem where the brake pedal was gradually going to the floor, it was pretty problematic, and it caused my sphincter to tighten on more than one occasion. But now that it has new brakes, in fact it's got new brake pads, brake rotors, and brake calipers, as well as brand new trailing arms on the back of the car, and now with a new oil change with the proper oil in it, it feels like a brand new car, albeit one that hit puberty and is now old enough to be my older sister. I have had people come up to me on more than one occasion and say to me, I should put a fart can or one of those ginormous exhausts on this thing. And I'm thinking to myself, and for Sadie's own sanity, that I simply refuse to do that. This car has enough character as it is, to the point where it is pleasant enough on long trips, despite not being the most comfortable car in the world. But also, I do not want to make it worse, because when it had the exhaust split on me, it was loud, and I couldn't really drive it anywhere without the risk of being pulled over from the excessive noise. And I am just so glad the exhaust was fixed, and it was so cheap to do it, so why reverse the process? So no, I will not be straight piping this car. No, I won't be putting a fart can on it. I'm planning on keeping it exactly how it is. I might swap out the radio, which, even though it has no CD or cassette, it is original, and that is something I also love to see as well. So anyways, guys, that concludes today's video and video update of the Saturn SL1. That is my daily driver. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Feel free to like, share, as well as subscribe to McElroy's Motors today, and I will have more videos coming along soon. If my grandfather gets another Jeep Compass, he should have it painted this color. Ew. I know this is a Mazda CX-50 in front of me, but someone, can you please explain why on earth does it have an M badge on its license plate frame? It makes no sense. Zoom zoom, I guess.